Yes, guys, welcome back to Flat Cap Bureau Talk here, and we are going to be actually talking about a midfielder that I think we should be signing. There haven't really been any links to this player, but I feel like he's actually the perfect solution for that creative midfield problem that a lot of us have been kind of coming up with suggestions for, but every single time we seem to find maybe some reason as to why it might not work out or even why the player would never even choose Spurs. But this one I think could be a clever one. It is going to be FABIÁN Ruiz. By the way, everybody, I am on vacation kind of starting Tuesday or tomorrow. So basically, I have all these kind of videos laid out for you guys. I'm going to schedule release them, but I can't make anything kind of on the fly in case any news come out while I am gone on a vacation, though. But here it is, Fabian Ruiz, and why I think he'd actually be the perfect creative midfielder for Spurs and why we should actually seize this opportunity because I do believe Arsenal, everyone, are maybe putting their priority on sort of Yuri Tillemans. I think Fabian Ruiz is sort of the alternative in case they don't get Yuri Tillemans. And I think maybe Newcastle as well might be interested in the Spanish midfielder, but I don't see a lot of interest at this moment in time. So I'd really like Spurs maybe just swoop in there. And he could be an interesting one because, especially because his natural position isn't exactly even a creative midfield. But let's just go through the basic facts. This last season, he actually had 7 goals and 4 assists, 7 non-penalty goals as well, everybody. And he played over 2,000 minutes, which is good to see. 32 matches played. And last year in the Serie A, he had 3 goals and 1 assist. I think all non-penalty as well there. And then also played actually 2,500 minutes, which is plenty of football last season in the Serie A as well. Born in Los Palacios y Villafranca, Spain. I believe that's actually kind of just near Sevilla or near Seville. He's 26 years old. He's actually, maybe starting to reach, the prime of his career. Left-footed. He mostly plays as a center mid. Can also play in a midfield too, like next to a center defensive mid. Can even play as, a two mid, two-man CDM. He probably fit a 4-2-3-1 actually really well as one of those deep lying playmakers. But I'm going to venture to say that he could also play a bit higher up the field if you needed him to. And I guess maybe you'll find out in the comments, whether you guys agree with me on that or not. 1.89 meters, 6 feet 2 inches. He is one of those taller players, and Conte likes the taller players. I think we know that. And his youth career was over at Betis, which is a Seville club. Valued at £49.5 million, and his contract expires in 2023, which is kind of why I feel like this is, the reason maybe Spurs should take a look at him, just because he is expected to leave this summer from Napoli. You probably wouldn't have to pay nearly as much as you definitely would in years past. This could be maybe a bit more of a bargain signing, which we know maybe Spurs really like. Still definitely have to or pay plenty of money. Probably around £35 million is what I would reckon. Maybe still, that's just a guess though. Really, maybe even a bit more. But this could be a real good opportunity for Steele, especially if Arsenal are going to focus their priorities on Yuri Tillemans. And we also have that Champions League draw, of course. When looking at the stats and we're comparing him to all midfielders across Europe's top five leagues, everybody, and also when you're looking at those percentiles, anything that's close to 100. So the closer it is to 100, the better he ranks in those kind of comparisons to the rest of his midfield counterparts, across Europe. So when that number is, in the 80s and the 90s, it is quite impressive, you have to say. But when it comes to passes into the final third, he's in the top 6 percentile there. I would say when it comes to progressing the ball, he is going to have really high numbers, mostly because he plays in probably a deeper sort of role, maybe with Napoli, instead of playing a real creative midfield role. He plays next to Anguissa, who is a fantastic defensive midfielder for Napoli recently and was for Fulham as well. But he kind of plays, alongside Anguissa, if I'm not mistaken, and so plays maybe a bit of a deeper role. So his sort of progressive numbers are going to be a bit higher, mostly because, he plays in a deeper role. So when you have a deeper role to play, you can have a better opportunity to progress the ball forward. There's more green grass in front of you, maybe to say it simply. But still, he's has over 3 shot creating actions a game, which is nice to see, essentially creating over 3 chances a game. I really like his ball carrying skills, and most of the, I would say, kind of, stats when it comes to, his progressive carries and ball carrying and just total carries would sort of reflect that. I think he is one of the most elegant sort of ball carriers in Europe, in my belief. But he actually doesn't dribble past many players. And I think that's because, he's not really like a St. Maximin sort of type, where he's really dynamic. I think he's just a bit more graceful about it, the way that he kind of, carries the ball up the field. But also, again, like I said, because he plays such a deep lying role, doesn't really get or doesn't really need to, dribble past many players. I think he probably would avoid that if he could. And then when it comes to shots, though, he takes about 1.47 per 90, which, puts him in a decent percentile ranking there. But I actually think, he's a really good shooter. In fact, if you've seen any of his curlers before, they're absolutely gorgeous, I must say. He can have a real left foot bendy kind of into the top, top bins. And I really do enjoy his left footed curlers. They really are actually special. And he could actually offer maybe that long shot that we're missing. I think Basuma, brings a long shot. Hoiberg, has, the occasional, kind of screamer, that, gets close, but he doesn't usually score them or even take them very often. Doesn't really look like Bentancur has great shooting skills, nor does Ollie Skip. So we are maybe in need of maybe a midfielder that can sort of hit one from range and be able to kind of, bend one from outside the box as well. And I think he certainly, fits that bill. If you've ever seen FABIÁN Ruiz play, of course. But, that was just kind of, I think, a lot of stats. If you could tell, a lot of these stats sort of, I think, are very, important stats when we're looking for that creative midfielder. You want him to get passes up the field. You want him to have tons of progressive sort of stats. A key pass as well is a pass that leads directly to a shot on goal. I think that's, clearly very important. Shot creating actions is another way of looking at chances created. Progressive carries, as any carry, I think of 5 or 10 yards or more forward, players dribble past shots. I think all of these, reflect a good creative midfielder, or like the stats that you want to look for a good creative midfielder. I think those are kind of the categories, at least I would look for. But, just to maybe show a bit of respect towards FABIÁN, maybe we'll look at some of the things that he really does do exceptional in. And again, this is comparing him to all midfielders across Europe's top 5 leagues. He's in the top 10% when it comes into carries into the final third. Passes received, he is one of the most, kind of he's on the ball probably more than any other midfielder, or at least than most midfielders across Europe. He's in the top 2% there, so he has plenty of the ball, you could say. And again, that sort of, proves the point of that he is playing a much deeper role for Napoli than he is actually playing a creative midfield role. But I'd like to think that maybe he could do it. Progressive carrying distance, just how far does he carry the ball, per game? And he carries it about 150 yards or 151 yards per game. It puts him in the top 9 percentile there. He makes plenty of passes, under pressure, switches a play, completes nearly 3 a game. Long pass completion percentage. I just think, he's just one of the best passers of the football, I think, in general in this game, especially from the deeper positions. But he also has, he has a pass into the penalty area, into the box. That's like probably something I maybe should have put in the other stats before, because I do think that's also a really important maybe category to look for when you are maybe judging that creative midfielder, getting those passes into the penalty area, being able to feed someone who is, sitting in the box, which is certainly a really important stat to look at. But those are kind of the whole stat breakdowns. But maybe I can kind of just give sort of my final thoughts on maybe why I think this is actually a smart signing for Spurs, because I feel like maybe it's sort of being suggested, by people, but maybe I haven't heard it, as much as probably I expected, or maybe just as much as, maybe FABIÁN deserves. I think he should be mentioned, a bit more for this creative midfield role, perhaps because he doesn't really play that sort of position. Maybe that's why he's not being, suggested very much. But I feel like he solves that play time issue when it comes to creative midfielders. Often we don't really know how much Conte is going to do the 3-4-3, how much he's going to do the 3-5-2. And, if you're doing like Çalhanoğlu, Ericsson, those sort of players, I don't think they're going to be able to play in a midfield two alongside a Højbjerg or someone in a 3-4-3, whereas someone like a FABIÁN actually could. So it'd be a smart signing because he could play that creative midfield sort of role in a 3-5-2, but then also be able to do, sort of a pivot role, I think, in the 3-4-3. And so, like I said, he can easily play in a midfield too. He's done it alongside Anguissa. So I do feel like that is a smart signing for that reason. He is more of a tempo setter, a midfield maestro as well. Him kind of, taking up a higher role, or, in the pitch, or, being to have to play higher up the pitch. I'm not sure how he's going to deal with it. I think he's probably good enough to deal with it, but he is, someone that likes to receive the ball deep, and he is someone that likes to make things happen, and he likes to receive the ball a lot. So we'll see how he does with that, sort of it. But, it's good to see that, or at least the point being is that he is someone that, dominates sort of, teams. He is someone that wants the ball at his feet, and he can make things happen, which is exactly what we're sort of looking sometimes from a creative midfielder, to be fair. And last but not least, he is very tall. He's pretty strong, I must say. And then he is not, he's like approaching, the prime of his career as well, which I think are all very important attributes for what Conte is looking in his midfielders. I think he doesn't really want someone that's too young. He likes people that are a bit more robust, a bit taller and stronger. And Fabian certainly, fits that role. But everybody, let me know what you think of Fabian Ruiz, whether this is a good suggestion or not for that creative midfield role that Spurs are still looking out for. Hopefully, we do sign one this summer. I think we can take our time on it. If I'm going to be honest, it's not the most important, sort of position to fill because I do feel like we have other areas that we still need to judge, and maybe, get players in first. But let me know what you think of the suggestion of Fabian Ruiz. As always, everybody, hit that like button on your way out. As well, leave a super thanks if you do like the channel, if you do want to support it. But as always, everybody, come on, you Spurs, and I will be seeing you.